Thanks all for joining us this evening. This district youth support session is one of several for District 1010, aimed at providing Rotary members with any helpful information, where to find information in the members section of the website, and to answer any questions that you may have. This session is made up of 6 short presentations, each with a brief question and answer, and we intend to keep the session to within the promised hour to avoid keeping you all here this evening. At the end of the session, I'll show you a list of all the important dates and my contact details. If you have any further questions which you need answers to, which we do not have time for, please contact me at my email address and I will respond to all of them. Later on this year, we'll be having a further session which will provide information about Rotary Kids, Interact and Youth Exchange. And I know that Ryla will be following on later as well. So Sheena's very kindly offered to do Young Artists this year, although she wasn't put down as Young Artist leader, were you originally, Sheena? But anyway, Sheena's going to do Young Artists for us now. So I'll, you ready for me to share the screen now?
Yes, sir. We'll just wait for the screen share.
If you could, please. The first one is going to be Young Artist. And I'll get down to the windows because I've only got so much room. Here we go.
Well, first of all, even if it doesn't come up, I can actually just explain that I think now this term is actually a good time to actually introduce young artists and actually all the competitions to your school. And most of the competitions are open to a variety of age groups. And the first thing I will say that, like Young Artists, for example, is 7 to 10. All this information you can actually find in the documents, which I'm sure Steve is going to show you how to access them. One of the things about all the competitions is the cut-off date is for ages is the 31st of August. So if a child, for example, is 10 on the 30th of August or 31st of August, they can actually take part in the competition. If they're actually 11 on the 1st of September, they can still enter the junior ages of the competition. But you'll find all that information in all the documents which are available. So can I have the first slide, please? Sorry to do it this way. I'd rather work myself. Well, first of all, the competition, Young Artist is one that a lot of teachers like to do because it's actually quite a simple one. And it's a fairly good topic this year for schools to do, and sometimes they do it as a whole school or a whole class kind of exercise. And if you look at the little diagram on the other side, that was actually what happened last year. The theme last year was the colours of nature. And one of the schools that I was involved with, they all kind of did similar things, but the winning entry was actually the one that actually wrote a sentence about the bird that they did. And I looked it up and it was actually the right colours. They also had placed the kind of tree stump or whatever it is at a good angle. It was quite a nice looking picture, and they had paid some kind of attention to the background as well. Now, what you can do is provide drawings in pen and ink. You can use paint, you can use collage, you can even use printmaking. The only stipulation they say that is that you must make it up to A2, no larger than A2. So it could be quite a small A5, or it could be A4, or it could be A3. It could be anything less than A2. One of the things about the competition is that the prints can be sent digitally. Sometimes it doesn't always show them to best advantage digitally, if I can say that correctly, but they have to be sent off to GB&I in a digital form. So it's actually quite good if they do come in a digital form. One of the things that I will say, which I think sometimes is disappointing, but I can understand why this is the case. But they don't accept anything which is part of an exam folio. Partly for one of the reasons for that is because the stuff isn't necessarily sent back in time to be entered for the exam. So it can't really be part of the seniors exam folio. And as a result, we found it very difficult in my club to get senior kids in secondary school to do this. It seems to be a competition which particularly primary schools like to favour. If you look at the next slide, the thing about, this is some pictures from last year's competition, and it was from the intermediate side. One of the things I would say about the competition is that you can interpret the theme in your own way. And last year, the colours of nature obviously lended itself to some kind of pictures that, for example, were landscapes, but it also led to a kind of interpretation in a more well, slightly unrealistic form, but in a more diagram form, a more design form, as you can see in the fish picture. One of the things that I will say about the pictures is that they have to come with a statement which actually describes the relationship of the work to the art or the theme. And some of the entries that we got let themselves down by not actually providing that. The other thing that I will also kind of highlight is the fact that they have to be original pieces of work and not copied. So you can't copy a Van Gogh, you can't copy a Renoir, but it has to be an original piece of work, and it has to be sent without being framed or mounted in any way. And if you look at the next slide, can I also just suggest to you that the entries have to be judged by someone who's appropriate. Actually, when I look at these two entries from the junior section, I love the little picture of the, it's not a gorilla, sorry, it's a orangutan. It actually came from a baby orangutan in Borneo, and there was a lovely little description that came with it. And it was one of the entries into the junior side of the competition. I actually loved that picture, but I'm afraid it wasn't really up to me, and the judges went for the other one, which had a very colourful kind of background of trees, and it was actually produced by somebody, I think, who was actually slightly younger. Judges should be appropriate. And one of the things that I tried to do is to ensure that the judges that I had some experience of working with primary school pupils and with secondary pupils. But I also had a couple of people who were professional artists. One of them was an artist and the other one was a design. So when it came to judging, particularly for the district competition, I actually tried to involve people that had a kind of definite interest and skills in actually that area. If you look at the next slide, this is what the judges are looking at. They're looking at technical merit, they're looking at content, composition, imagination and style. And can I just say that the picture which is in the frame at the side, the artwork of the heart, I think it is. Was actually the winner nationally. We didn't have anything like that quality. And partly, I think the reason for that is because we can't really use artwork which is being used for exam purposes, and the dates of the competition, etc., don't really kind of lead to work like that. We tend to do best with youngsters who are in primary school or in first and second year. And if in fact, when I target the competition within my club area, that's the area that I seem to get most entries for. And I think the young artists can be quite a good competition for youngsters to do. And if you look at the next slide, which is actually the junior winner, you can see that it's a very, obviously a very talented youngster who produced this picture nationally. And can I actually just say that one of the things that I love with competitions like that, and I know having been out in our local school, one of our local schools today, they love competitions. They were asking us, when is the next competition going to take place? And one of the things that I think is particularly good about competitions is that it gives you a link to the school. And if you go in presenting prizes and trophies, etc., it seems to be something which works really well. Prizes for competitions are supposed to relate to the field. For example, art competitions should have brushes, paints, crayons, things like that as the prize is, but I must admit that kids in our area like to actually have the money as well. But we are supposed to give prizes that relate to these things. But I'm afraid most of the time we actually do give prizes that, particularly for young artists, that are actually monetary prizes. So that is Young Artist. If anybody has any questions, I hope.
2 seconds and I'll stop. I can't see anybody, so I'll stop sharing my screen for a second. Or you can see, can you, Sheena?
No, I can't see anybody. Do you want me to do the next one, since I've got the next one as well?
Yeah, carry on through all. Yeah, you've got all three to do, and then we'll do the questions.
They're going to hate the sound of my voice. But all right, we'll look at the next slide. And I've also been asked to do Young Chef. I actually have had involvement in Young Chef and have organised a couple of district finals. So it's a competition that I feel I know something about, although I'm not the coordinator for it this year. That is actually Jim Hooson. And Jim Hooson sent me a couple of slides about this competition. I've actually added a couple of slides myself from that. So if I look at the next slide, he actually is saying that the aim of the competition is to encourage and develop cookery skills, to learn how to cook a healthy meal, to develop food presentation skills, consider food hygiene issues, develop organisation and planning skills, and develop an ability to cope in a demanding situation. And the demanding situation is actually producing a 3-course meal in 2 hours, which I think even quite a lot of adults would struggle to do. If you look at the next slide, what Jim has done is he's actually highlighted the age ranges. For Young Chef, youngsters have to be at least 11, and the cut-off age, I should say between 11 and 17, and the cut-off for the age is actually the 31st of August. So for example, if somebody is 18 on the 1st of September, they can still take part in this competition. They can attend school, college, or be home educated. However, they can't be catering students. So somebody, for example, who goes to college on a Wednesday to do some aspect of catering cannot take part in this competition, because they obviously would have some kind of unfair advantage. And one of the things about all competitions, it's really actually good not just to involve youngsters, but who in schools, but actually other organisations, and this is true for young artists, young environmentals, young writer, etc. The Scouts, the other youth organisations could also be involved in taking part in these competitions. And Scouts and things and guides have badges that are to do with cooking, so it might be a good idea to try and involve them as well. The entries have to come through the local Rotary Club, and obviously, well, often we have to use school premises for this, but there's no reason why the Scouts or other organisations couldn't actually include youngsters in these competitions. If you look at the next slide, it actually tells you the 4 stages of the competitions. The local heat, which we are hoping to have, most clubs would have before the end of December, because it's hoped that the district competition will either be the 28th of January or the 4th of February. I did email Jim this week, and he said he hadn't actually heard back from Dundee which of these dates were suitable to them. The competition is usually held in the college in Dundee, because they can actually take 16 youngsters, and it's a really good place to hold a final. The next stage would be a cluster final, which is actually the Scottish districts, ourselves 1010, 1020 and 1230 taking part in a competition together, and that's usually held in March. The GB&I final is usually held at the end of April, and it's hoped that all these finals will actually be held in the same weekend. The next slide, I thought I would actually show you some of the, just a couple of slides from the previous district final. You might recognise Alistair McNair, who's tasting the food. One of the things you should try and get is a judge who's got kind of appropriate experience. Somebody who works as chef in a local restaurant, even the cook in the school dinners or somebody like that would be a good person to come and help judge the competition. We usually use the district governor, Ken, to help judge it. So, now, one thing I will say, having been involved in the finals in the last few years, one of the criticisms that a lot of the chefs have had has been that the meals that they've tasted have been under seasoned. And one of the reasons for that is that in schools today, kids are not encouraged to use a lot of salt. And if you have children going forward to the final, I would actually encourage you to try and increase the seasoning, get them to increase the seasoning in their dishes, because that's one of the things that have also has always been criticised. The other thing that I will point out, it's really important that you look at the judging criteria for the young chef in the guidelines, because only 15 out of 50 marks actually go for tasting the food. Other things that are marked down are things like timings, their skills in the kitchen, whether they get things organised in time within the 2 hours, 3 courses, and also things like, for example, their use of knife skills. All these things are actually very important, and they all are marked out of 5. And the judging criteria is very clearly marked in the guidelines. If you look at the next slide, you can see that the quality of what is actually produced by the youngsters, this is just one example of what was produced the last time. You can see that they've laid things out nicely. And if you look at the next slide, you can see here is an example of some of the presentation skills that have been used by some of the youngsters that have taken part in the competition. Okay, if we look at the next competition, sorry to continue with my voice. First of all, can I just say that I've not had a lot of experience with the Young Environmentalist competition. It was a competition which was run last year by this district, and I think we only had 2 entries. And one of the problems with the entries was that it didn't actually, neither of them met the criteria and could not go forward to the national final. But this is some of the things that is designed in this competition. The youngsters are encouraged to interact with the environment, address environmental issues, and develop and explore solutions to these issues. And they also explore, investigate, research, and undertake an environmental sustainability project. Now, one of the things that has been criticised by many people who have taken part in the competition is that it's far too complicated. And I believe that I'm not completely convinced of this, but I've been told that the project was set up by somebody who was a professor and really didn't have much kind of school education background. And I believe that the guidelines are supposed to be going to be simplified, but I'm not definite about that. But it's something which obviously we would like to see happen, because at the present moment it doesn't look as if it's a competition which many clubs will do, although I believe West Fife find this very popular to do, as one of the clubs that have taken part in the past. If you look at the next slide, which shows some of the key points, entries can actually be individual. It can be just one person doing it, or it can actually be a group entry with a maximum of 4 participants. The theme this year is biodiversity, and all the there are plenty of ideas for it in pages 4 and 5 of the guidelines. The presentation is details are on page 5. Watch the length of this, because sometimes you get rejected right at the very beginning because your submission is actually too long, and they have very definite guidelines for the length of the written submission. I think it's 1,000 words, and they also have ideas for how long an audio or a video presentation should be. And if you have youngsters who are planning to enter this competition, make sure that they adhere to the guidelines. Make sure the submission is actually on biodiversity. Some of the entries last year were not on the theme, and that meant that they were rejected right at the very beginning. So there was a lot of things. It's quite a complicated competition, so you need to make sure that that youngsters actually do meet the criteria. Although I do believe that the criteria is being looked at because it's reckoned to be a bit too complicated, but I think that might be for next year and not for this. So it's something that you might want to think about. Okay, that's all I have to say.
That's great. Thanks, Sheena. Now, obviously, Sheena's gone through those 3 competitions. Are there any questions at this stage? Don't worry, if you think about questions later, you can come back to me. Anne, can you unmute, sorry?
Yeah, you can hear me, yes?
I can indeed.
Yeah. As far as the young environmentalist is concerned, I actually had a chat with the guy who has written it all, and even our Rotary kids had actually sent some information in, making suggestions, and that was way back last year. And yes, too complicated. I'd thought that there was actually we were going to have a district environmental competition.
Well, this was the plan. It's still the plan, but it's being worked on at the moment. Let's put it like that. Unfortunately, the lead on it is on holiday this week. Otherwise, he would have been here to answer that question a bit easier. So, but yes, it is a plan to have it for the district. Yes. I
think that would be brilliant. I really do.
Yeah, but as Sheena said, there were only 2 entries last year.
Yeah. And I'm not sure if we actually did. I never heard who the winner was because none of them met the criteria. So we weren't able to put them forward, and I'm not sure what's happened to them.
Obviously, when there is any progress on that, you'll all be circulated. I'll let you know. Any more?
A couple of people with hands up there. John Milne, I think, was first.
Yes, John. Unmute, please, John.
I have to unmute.
Is that it?
Aye, that's it.
It was just a quick question, Sheena. On I think the second last slide on young artist, where it was the heart, and that looked like it had been framed and then a digital image submission. No.
Can I just say that it was framed because it was one of the winning entries, and what happened was that the winners, the district framed the winners. They didn't frame any others, and you're not allowed to send a framed.
So it wasn't.
It can't even be mounted. It has to just be the picture.
So it was somebody framed it post victory, so to speak. Before
it was framed afterwards. I just took it from the website. I took a photo.
Callum?
Yes, Sheena, young chef, bit concerned that schools and the government and everybody are arguing against over seasoning. Why does Rotary want to make children ill by having too much seasoning?
I don't think we want too much seasoning. I think the thing is that a lot of the things were just felt to be under seasoned, and that is part of the kind of guidelines in the school. It just meant that the professional chefs, when they came to taste the food, didn't give 5 points, they maybe gave 4.
Okay.
But, yeah,
I'll try, we're running young chef, I'll try and drop broad hints on that score.
Yeah, that's one of the things. But then if you think that the main course is only 5 marks, and that's where it was out of 50, it doesn't make a big impact on the final result.
Okay, fine, fine.
Yeah. but if you are entering, have a real look at and if you're running your own competition, look at what 5 marks are given for. That nice skills and presentation and working tidily and things like that, that all gets 5 marks. There's only 15 marks for the final kind of food, because timings are also marked as well. But the other thing I meant to say was, if you're running a competition in your club, what we do is we actually only do 2 courses initially.
We have always done 2 in the past.
Yeah, 2 in a club, and then 3 when you come to do it in the final, because I think 2 gives you a good idea of which kids are going to be quite good. And then what normally clubs do is they actually get a professional chef or somebody to work with them to kind of enhance their skills and to look at how they can present the food better and maybe add something to it. So that's how it normally works, and it's worked successfully like that in the past.
Yeah, thank you, Sheena. That's kind.
Oh, I should also have said, I forgot to say that normally they have to do costings, and it's £22 for the final. But if I'm running a club event, I actually just, since it's 2 courses, £15 usually.
Yeah,
it's £22.
we were going to make it 15, so that sounds okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Ian Copeland.
Thank you, Sheena. You partially answered my question about budgeting and so on. I take it that all the competitors will be working to a set menu.
No, the kids make up their own menus.
Very good, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and they do that very often if it's with a scout group or with staff in school. I had a discussion yesterday with our home economics teacher, and they're actually thinking of doing the competition with 2nd year youngsters, 2nd and 3rd year.
So there is room for variation. Yep.
Yeah, they are. And actually, it's amazing what the kids do. I don't know if you've ever been to one of the competitions, but you get things like sometimes venison and fish. It's amazing what you can do in £22 if you judge it right.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that's great. Superb. I see no more hands up. So Sheena, thank you very much for all that. You've done 3 times as much work as everybody else, so that's great. And now you can get away to your next meeting. So moving on, next presentation is by Douglas Gilmore, and it's to do with the young musician. Douglas. You have to unmute, Douglas.
Sorry, yeah, I've got to share my screen here because it's
Indeed.
so I'll click the share screen button now. Can you see that now?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the young musician competition. Just at the start to say that a lot of the general comments that Sheena has made will apply to the young musician competition as well. I'll mention a bit about the national competition and how the local club ones fit into that. And then I'll say a little bit about local club competitions, and then I'll mention what the arrangements for this season are. So the stated objectives by Rotary for the Young Musician Competition are, as you see there, to offer young people the experience of performing on a public stage and an opportunity to showcase their musical talent, which are very much, these first 2 are very much related, I guess, but also to get some impartial feedback from experienced adjudicators. And that's quite important when it comes to choosing your adjudicators, I guess. Now, the national competition is, like a lot of the other competitions, in 4 stages, starting with the club competition, moving to the district, and then the region. And in our case, the region is the whole of Scotland, our 3 districts. And then to the national competition, and winners of each stage go through to the following stage. If there are a lot of clubs producing having competitions and putting forward competitors to the district. Sometimes area heats are required in between the club competition and the district competition, but we've never had to do that so far in our district. The general rules for the national competition, I've just put the most important ones down here, but of course, there's a lot of further rules and guidelines and information available from the website, which I think Steele will be talking about later on. The age limit is 17 on the 31st of August. So again, as Sheena said in some of hers, if you're 18 on the 1st of September, you can still compete. There are two categories, solo instrumental and solo vocal. In either of these, the soloist can be accompanied if that is appropriate, but no accompanist is provided by Rotary for this competition. The maximum performance time is 10 minutes, and all the competitors have to provide 3 copies of music for the adjudicators, of which there are usually 3, and these are professional musicians, or should be. Now, as I say, there's a lot of further information and guidance available on the website. And in fact, just to mention here, I have in fact sent out some more information to the youth conveners in the clubs via the secretaries. I've sent some of that out today, so that should be with you within the next day or two. Now, as far as local club competitions are concerned, you don't need to stick to these rules, which I've just mentioned, because they're compulsory for the national competition and the regional competition, and I will also apply them for the district competition. But for the local competition, you can really do anything you like, which suits your local environment and conditions. So I'm just going to describe briefly what we've done in Auchterarder, just to give an example of how you can vary things and to suit your own requirements. We have always had 4 sections in our club competition, divided by from grades 1 and 2 at the bottom end, as it were, to grades 7 and 8 at the top end. The idea here being to give as many people at different levels, as many youngsters at different levels, the opportunity to perform in public and to compete against people of their own standard. We only have one category because we never have enough vocal students coming forward to have a separate competition, so we lump the two together. I've always regarded the voice just as being an instrument anyway, so I'm never quite sure why we have a separate vocal and instrumental competition. The performance time, we start off with only about 2 to 3 minutes for the grades 1 and 2, up to about 10 minutes for the highest grade. We only use one adjudicator for the club competition, but he is always a professional musician. And we also have provided a professional accompanist in the past. We may or may not do that in the future, but that depends on your local requirements, really. We have trophies for the winners of each section and certificates for every competitor. And then the winner of grades 7 and 8 goes through to the district competition. Now, I want just to play you a very brief, it's I think about 2-minute video of, not quite, it'll be after this one, our club arrangements. This is just a summary of the sort of things you've got to do if you're going to arrange this sort of competition. Really, by now, you should have arranged the date and the venue, or certainly within the next week or 2, it needs to be done. You need to notify the schools and any other organisation like the Scout groups or whatever, and provide them entry forms. You have to book your adjudicator and accompanist if you're using that. And you need to collect, nearer the time, you need to collate the entry forms and make up the programme, and then print programmes and certificates. And then, of course, you've got to organise how the day itself is going to work and all the people you need to help with that. Now, I just want to show you a 2-minute video of how we, it just gives you a kind of snapshot of the sort of thing you can do at the local competition, and it gives you an idea of the sort of variation in standard. So I'll just play that now. Now, the violinist that you heard at the end there and also was playing intermittently throughout the video was Maya Christie, who won our club competition in 2018 and then went on to win the district and was highly commended in the regional competition. And just an example of it, she had gone through our club competition at all the levels and then emerged to win the district and perform very well in the regional competition. Now, finally, just to give you the arrangements for this session, the national final will be on the weekend that I think Sheena mentioned, the 22nd of April. The venue for that still to be notified. The regional final, which, as I said, was all 3 Scottish districts, will be in March next year. And that will be at the Royal Conservatoire of Scotland in Glasgow and will be organised by District 1230. The District 1010 final will be on Saturday, the 4th of February at the Loch Leven Community Campus in Kinross. And that's where we held the last couple of district events and also the regional event, the last regional event that there was. Now, each club can submit a maximum of 1 vocal and 1 instrumental entry, and the deadline for these expressions of interest is Friday, the 9th of December. That's really when I need to know from the clubs who are going to be having competitions and who are going to send entrants for the district competition. And then I'll need to have the entry forms and 3 copies of the music for the adjudicators by Friday the 20th of January. And that really only gives me a couple of weeks to organise the programme and so on. So I can't really accept any entries after the 20th of January. So that's all I want to say at the moment. But if there's any questions, then I'm happy to answer if I can.
That's great, Douglas.
No,
you need to share your screen. That's it. Thanks. Right. Any questions on that? Although that's a lot of information there anyway. So good. I don't see any hands up. Excellent. Anyway, as I said earlier, if anybody has any questions, once you get into it, then either contact Douglas or indeed to me, and I'll get the answers for you. So next is Donald Stewart, who's going to be explaining about the young photographer. And I'll get ready to share the screen, Donald, whenever you're ready.
Okay, Steve, fire away.
When I find it. Yeah, first. Was this for the first or at the end of it?
That's the last one, yes, that's the very last one.
No problem. I'll stop that one and then get back to the photographs again.
The first one is YP1. It was the...
All right, I'm there. There you go.
Right. Good evening, everyone. Since many of the conditions that are attached to the young photographer are similar to those for other things, like young artist, as Sheila was saying earlier, I'm not going to go over them again. There are 3 age groups within the young photographer. They are the junior category, the intermediate category, and the senior category. And the conditions and the cut-off dates are exactly the same for young artists, which makes life a lot easier, I presume, for people down in the south. Okay, could I have next slide, Steve, please? Okay, what I'm showing you is just some of the photographs that we got for last year's photography competition, which was the beauty of nature. All of these photographs were submitted, and although we ask for some detail about them, we don't differentiate between whether the photograph is taken with a digital camera or on a phone. And these days, phones are so powerful that you can get high quality images from them. So that the first 2 that I showed you were photographs in the junior category. Could I have next slide, Steve, please? And the next 2 photographs are from the intermediate category. So you would expect the quality of the photograph to go up steadily. Okay. Next one, Steve. This again is a youngster from the intermediate category looking at the beauty of nature in maybe a slightly different perspective from one that we would normally see. Okay, next slide. Yep. And this is one from the seniors. Nicely composed, fulfilling all the criteria. And next one, somewhat more unusual. And that's something I think we should encourage the youngsters to do, to try and maybe look at something a little bit different. The next 3 are the 3 winners. This is the winner of the junior category, and for all of the photographs that are entered, they are judged on technical merit, interpretation of theme, and imagination. And the 3 winners, I think, this is the winner of the intermediate category, and the 3 winners, I think, met all of these criteria without any great difficulty. And the last one, Steve, last photograph anyway, is a stag up in Torridon. Okay. Can I just say a little bit about judges? I know that a lot of clubs tend to bring in professional judges, professional photographers as judges. I would try and encourage you, if you're going to go down that route, it might be better to have a judging panel, ideally a judging panel that contains some of your members, because with no disrespect to professional photographers, they tend to be looking for things which are not necessarily things that would appeal to your average viewer. And I think sometimes when you've got professional photographers doing the judging becomes a wee bit skewed. So having some of your members as on the judging panel, that would work. I think that works well in terms of getting a better representation of what people think of photography. Could I have the last slide then, Steve? The text.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Okay.
No, wrong one, sorry. Yeah. We got that?
Nope.
Ah, I've got it on time. It says it's sharing it.
Right.
Oh dear, right. Technical issue.
Maybe if you close that window and open the other one.
Right, okay. Ah. Let's go back. Right, start again.
Right, okay, that's the one.
Sorry about that.
Okay, so let's get on. This is for this year. The theme this year is the beauty of architecture. Unlike previous years, when youngsters had to submit a portfolio of 3 photographs, there's only have to submit 1 this year, and it's not to be in print form, it's to be on digital form. The RIBI have suggested that our Rotary GBI, or whatever we're calling it these days, suggested it should be at least 1500 pixels on the longest side, with a suggested resolution of 300. That's my suggestion, a suggested resolution of 300 DPIs. The next bit is important because quite frequently I do not get these 2 pieces of information, and particularly if it's the winning photograph, and we're close to the deadline for sending things down to Ulster, I have to rush about trying to get the information. So when you're submitting your entries, could you please make sure that they're accompanied by a completed entry form? And I mean completed, I don't mean just the name of the entrant and their mother or their father signing it. I mean all the bits filled in, please. Makes life much easier. And also, as Sheila was saying earlier, there is a requirement for a brief statement from the photographer about why and how it was taken. It does not have to be anything more than maybe a couple of sentences. But if I don't have that, I cannot send it down to Rotary in England to go into the national competition. Okay. Could you please note that each club can submit a maximum of 3 entries. That's not 3 entries that's 3 entries in total, not 3 entries in each of the categories. So each club, if they want, can submit 1 junior, 1 intermediate and 1 senior. Okay. And could you please make sure that when you send it, you tell me who the contact person is, so I can get back to that person when it comes to conveying the results of the competition, and who are the prize winners and who has won the Quaich. Okay, it's a bit earlier this year than it has been in terms of years past, in that because of the criteria that we've got from down south, I need to get district entries into me by the 27th of February next year. As far as your own judging is concerned, I am quite happy to leave the clubs to decide on how they will do that. I think you're all experienced enough and knowledgeable enough to be able to do that. And as long as you get your judging done and the entries, your winning entries to me by that date, that's fine. Okay. All competing clubs will be informed of the judges' entries, judges' decisions, and the best 3 images and the winner of the Quaich the day after the judging is done. Okay, and the winning entries from the district competition will then progress to the national finals, and clubs will be informed as soon as we have that information. Okay, so I'm happy to take any questions or any queries that anyone might have and answer them to the best of my knowledge.
Thank you very much, Donald. That's great. Some beautiful photographs.
Yep, we're very fortunate in that we do get superb quality from our young people in Scotland.
And good subjects like that stag.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's an interesting story. If you know where that stag is, that's not a difficult photograph to take. It's up in Torridon. That stag comes down and lies in the car park and just lies around. So, photograph me. But it's still a good photograph. The young lady caught it very well.
Yeah, very good. A bit of a poser then, is it? No, that's
yeah.
Sorry, that's great. I was very impressed with that one. I wonder if I'd managed to get it to stay still. It wasn't on the payroll. Okay, there are no hands up, so it proves that your presentation was very informative, Donald. Thank you very much. So next we're going on to the young writer with Charlotte. If you unmute yourself, Charlotte.
Right, Steve, can I get just the first slide and then just move on to the second one? Okay, please.
Certainly. Once I find it. There you go.
Okay,
Can you see that?
from this
Yeah.
slide, yes, thank you, Steve. To emphasize, the theme this year is peace. So hopefully this year we won't get sort of very wide-ranging interpretations, because last year it was one word again, environment, and many clubs, I'm not saying just in this district, change that to the environment, which is not much of addition, but it is a subtle difference in the two. So I look forward to answers to the entries this year. Can I get the second one? That's the third one, please.
Sorry.
Now, I have already put onto the District 1010 website a link to the competition, so I'm not going to go through all the guidelines here. General information for schools, which you can send out to schools and other organisations. On the members area of the website, I put a more fulsome piece for clubs in terms of the criteria for the competition. And the entry form, I believe, is in the members area, but if anyone has any difficulty finding it, then they email me and I will send them the relevant form. Now, if we have the third slide, Steve, please. Right. These were just things which I highlighted in my mind, because I only first started to deal with this competition as an individual in my own club 2 years ago. Didn't think I would get any entries, and within 24 hours of the deadline had 93 pieces of writing, which took me by surprise. And that was definitely a phone a friend time for judges. I would say our success has come in our launch because we've over the years built up links, good links with our primary schools, and we're doing that with the academy, the one academy in our area. The one thing that really appeals to me about this competition is the fact that it is inclusive, because we're not just looking for the talented writers, we're looking for all writers. And I think that is what appealed to the schools during the COVID lockdown as well. We had lots and lots of young people who were at home and were really keen to enter. It also links in with the curriculum for excellence in schools, but I think it's good to stress how it, because each person's entry is recognised with a certificate of participation, then it is very good in terms of just building self-esteem and worth. And the one writing piece that stands out in my mind is a piece that was only about 6 lines long. It didn't have any sentences in it or anything, but boy, did it touch the heartstrings. It didn't win, but somebody had put an awful lot of work in just to put these thoughts down on paper. And it was really an interesting piece of writing. The presentation and the layout is really important because of lockdown, we had a lot of entries which had been scanned and rescanned, or they had been photographed with somebody standing in front of the freezer in the kitchen, and it was pencil written on. And so by the time it had gone through all the processing, to get it ready, you really couldn't read it clearly. And the judges came up with that comment, that I had the same judges for the last 2 years. And so they came up with that Word documents are really preferred. Spelling and handwriting, well, obviously if you're going to do a Word document, that doesn't come into it. But spelling, handwriting, legibility do count. A handwritten entry will not be discounted or marked down, but it is, it makes it much simpler to pass on the winning entries nationally and to district if they are word processed. And interestingly, I just learned last week in a visit to the local academy that the SQA pieces from schools being submitted have all to be done as Word documents now. I think it's also important to recognise that scribes are acceptable, except only in Rotary could we refer to scribes as an amanuensis. I don't think I've seen that word in decades, but it comes up in the Rotary guidelines here. And when I mentioned it to one member of staff in the school, they went, "Really? I've never heard that word before." So, you know, feel free to have scribed entries. That will be totally acceptable. From my personal experience, it's easier to get entrance in the junior and intermediates categories. The senior category is very thin. Only 2 clubs submitted entries for the senior category in the district. And I think if you are running it in primary schools, with these pupils coming through to secondary, it's certainly trying to build up a continuum of people who are interested in the competition. And I know my local academy last year organised a writer to come in and do a workshop day with the pupils in the school. Sadly, we had a spike of COVID locally at that time, and that affected the number of pupils who could participate. But they've done the same again, and I've been asked to go in and be there when the writer is coming in this year. And I think if schools are willing to do something like that, that is really good. Some people before me have mentioned our selection of judges. Then I think in the writing category, that's really important too, because it's having people who understand, you know, about writing and what is acceptable, what is good, etc. Age as people is the same. The 31st of August 2022 on entry is your cutoff point. And I put down here my email address so that if anybody has any questions subsequent to this, or are stuck or can't find something, then email me, get in touch. There's not a problem. I'm quite happy for that to happen. Okay. Steve,
that's great. Thanks, Charlotte. It's all perfectly clear. I'm not sure about a scribe. Would you say manu what?
Amanuensis. Now look there, how many people would know in here? I don't know. Maybe I'm maybe I'm misjudging the Rotarians, but yes, amanuensis. You'll find it in the young writer criteria.
Okay, I'll have a look for that because I went to a grammar school as well and I've never heard of it. So, okay,
Ian
that's great,
Copeland's
Charlotte.
looking it up as we speak.
I see.
Yeah.
Oh, there you are. Oh, thank you very much. Learn to
How's the
pronounce a
spelling,
noun,
Philip?
a literary or artistic assistant input, whatever. Yes. Okay. Thanks. Fine. Any questions for Charlotte at this stage? No. Right. I'm watching the clock. We're getting there. So I've only got a couple of things left to do. One is I'm going to share with you, if I can, the competition dates. You bear with me a second. Right, can you see that okay? There's all the dates which for the competitions this year. Young artists, well, you can see for yourself there. These are all shown on the website as well. As you can see, the dates for the Young Sheffield Youth Musician are there. Final of the district primary schools quiz is in June at the Beach Ballroom, and the PSQ will be launched in January 23. No district competition for youth speaks, and that's my details there. If you want if you have any questions, or if any of your club comes up with questions, feel free to email me. It's quite a simple one, isn't it? Steve Wright, Rotary at BT Internet, and I'll do my best to get answers for you. So stop sharing that. And then the only other thing I was going to do, and I'm sure a lot of you know how to do this anyway, is how to find the details of all the individual competitions on the website. It is very, very simple once you've done it. So if you bear with me a second, I shall go through with you. When I find it.
And this bit is very important. Do not email Kath Chorley and ask her where it is. Our life's not worth it.
You're right. I'm going to have to, in my process, I've managed to disconnect from the website. So if you bear with me a second.
It's okay. We can catch it up after. We know what it is.
I've got it. I found it. It's okay. Now, I dare say that's not being shared at the moment. So I'll go back to Zoom. And then let me know when you see the right screen up, because I'm struggling with it here. So
Nothing so far.
right, okay, thanks. That's the problem, is I've got so many windows open that.
Steve, do you want me to share it?
Yes, by all means, please. Yes. What's the it's just the website, the first page of the website. No, actually, I was going right back to the start when you go into our GBI. I think what's happened is when I've closed something, I've closed the.
Okay.
Let's see if I can get back to it. Yes. There we go. Try this. Right. This is the opening page from the on the website when you go to Rotary GBI.org, and you'll see on the home screen at the top left hand side it's got members. You just click on that and then you can log in. Hopefully, yep, you get to the login page. If you've registered, obviously you'll have your password there, and I'll just log in now. And it takes me through to the dashboard. On the dashboard, straightforward, the various items, including youth competitions. I guess you can see that?
Yes.
Click on that, and it takes you through to all the different youth competitions and take in, for example, young artists. I'll click on that. And there we have all the resources that you need. It's got the age categories, etc. And down on this right-hand side, these are downloadable documents, including the entry form, which is in a Word format, etc. The information pack, the press release, young artist certificate, etc., etc. It's the same for all the different competitions, so it's dead easy to get to. And I've had people telling me it's not easy to find it on the website. It is quite easy if you go in that way. I admit sometimes getting back to it is not so easy, but it's easy to get to it if you start from scratch by going into that there, rotarygbi.org members section. So is that reasonably clear, I hope? But if anybody's got a problem with that, please come back to me. I know that it has been an issue sometimes. So anyway, that's my little thing finished. Again, we're about 6 minutes over time. Any questions at all for us on that?
Douglas?
Yeah, could I just point out, Steve, that sheet you had at the beginning, you had the district young musician competition as the 4th of March. That should be the 4th of February.
Okay.
Just to make sure that's.
Should be the 4th of February. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
I apologize for that.
No
I didn't
problem.
put that in.
Thank you.
I'm naming no names, but I didn't do that. I'll change it and then put it back into the presentation. So, so that's everything I have.